Rob on the mic, spitting truth from the heights. Queens unite under stadium lights. Bright nights, 7 train rides. Dreams born in the real hum. Brooklyn to Queens, yeah, we all about that outcome. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear. From Flushing Meadows, echoes bounce off the bat. Rob calls, take the mic, snaps like a thunderclap. Home runs over bridges, no gaps in the story. Mets rise, reclaiming the glory. 7 the city, blue and orange army swarm. Summer vibe electric, love in every form. From Biggie's blocks to Flushing's heartbeat. Our anthem loud, no retreat. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear. The apple pops in the outfield, city of dreams. Rob's voice over static, Mets on every stream. White lines mapped out the future, vividly. From shade to city, the journey's never gimmicky.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets Talk Live right here on the channel as we finally got some juicy news and details regarding the New York Mets actually showing a pulse this offseason, guys. Hit that like button, guys. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. And, well, I'm glad I didn't do the stream yesterday because there would have been a boring stream. As of today, the New York Mets have officially made a very competitive, strong offer to Kyle Tucker, and it is in a range of $50 million per year, ranging from 3 to 4 years. Again, a lot of details are still not out when it comes to Kyle Tucker and what the Mets are doing with the contract. Again, deferrals, opt-outs, or what. We know it's probably at least a 3-year deal. Some reports saying that it could be a 4-year, $200 million deal. And it's like, listen, it got Met fans excited, right? I don't believe Kyle Tucker is going to go to the Toronto Blue Jays. I don't think he wants to go there. I think if he was serious about a team that's willing to go to a long-term deal, 6-7 years, is the Toronto Blue Jays. You know, me and Chris talked about it on the last Hot Stove. That's the only team we can see him getting a long-term deal. We know the Dodgers don't want to do it. We know the Mets don't want to do it. And there's really no other team out there that seems very much interested in a long-term deal other than the Toronto Blue Jays. So him not pushing toward or leaning towards the Toronto Blue Jays tells me he doesn't want to go there. And yeah, it's probably between the Dodgers and the Mets, unless, which is very possible, the Blue Jays say fuck it and blow them out of water and say, you know what? Yeah, we offered you 6-7 years. We're gonna go 9 years. You know, they went extreme with Dylan Cease, right? Nobody thought he was gonna get more than a 5-year deal. Well, they went clearly the extra mile with that 7 years. So that is where, with the New York Mets, there's a little hope when it comes to Kyle Tucker because, you know, having a good Zoom meeting, which was reported that the meeting went very well, is that Tucker's very serious about the Mets and very serious about the Dodgers. I think if all else fails, he'll be a Blue Jay. But again, I think he would have been a Blue Jay already because I think the Blue Jays offered him a 6-7 year deal already. And it's probably ranging between $35 or $38 million a year in that long-term deal. But again, he's not a Blue Jay. Now, we can wake up tomorrow and he'll be a Blue Jay. If not, I think he could be a Met. Now, I'm not getting my hopes up. I think it's very hard to get a great player. And Kyle Tucker is one of those players that World Series champion, clutch performer, good defense, good bat. I mean, he's a good player, really good player. And pairing him with Lindor and Soto, that is a really big 1-2-3. And I think that would be a really good 1-2-3. Yes, they're all lefties, Obviously Lindor's a switch hitter, but they're all lefties. So we'll see. We will just really see. And, it is what it is at this point, right? It's a wait and see approach. There's a lot of reports stating that they think this Tucker deal or decision is going to come over the next few days. We'll see. Again, we'll be on Kyle Tucker watch for the next 24 to 48 hours and see. Because, again, once the team makes offers and he clearly has finalists for his services, there's always a mystery team somewhere. But once you get offers from teams, it's kind of coming to a head, right? It's coming to the end here. So it's going to be interesting because, again, there's nobody going to meet the price tag AAV where the New York Mets are. There was a report, I forgot who said it, but it was a legitimate reporter. I don't think it was John Heyman. I know it wasn't Will Salmon, but it was somebody that said that the Dodgers have a short-term deal, on the table, but it's nowhere near the $50 million a year that the Mets are offering Kyle Tucker. So let's say they offer him $35 million a year for 3 years. The only reason why he would go there, and the Dodgers aren't stupid, they're very enticing. Back-to-back World Series champions. He is probably the fifth guy, the fifth biggest star, sixth biggest star on that team, where if he goes to the Blue Jays, it's him and Vlad. He's the big guy with Vlad. He comes to the Mets, he's basically number 3 as the big guy on this team. So it depends on what he wants. Does he want the pressure of New York? There's no pressure in LA, right? They won championships. He's not the biggest star on that team. Ohtani takes all the attention. And the Blue Jays coming off, a half an inch from winning the World Series has a ton of pressure on them when it comes to Vlad and Tucker being the next big guy. If they're not going to sign Bo Bichette most likely. So he's going to be that next big guy. So we'll see. It's interesting to me because you do wonder, right? Where was this pivot from the Mets, right? Did they see the Tucker, I guess, market fall apart, and that's why the Mets got involved? Maybe. The Kyle Tucker situation is very similar to Pete Alonso last year, where there wasn't there was really no market at all for Pete Alonso last year. But in the Kyle Tucker sense, it doesn't seem like anybody's willing to go that extra mile. And that's where, sorry about that, guys. Long day. I wonder if, again, I really want to know what the Blue Jays are doing because we know the Dodgers made an offer, the Mets made an offer. I'm assuming the Toronto Blue Jays are going to make an offer, or if they did already. But again, if Toronto made an offer earlier than the Mets and the Dodgers, then why would Tucker meet with the Mets and the Dodgers? And we know the Mets met with him recently, or had a Zoom meeting with him recently. So yeah, the Giants too. The Giants can be that sneaky team that pops in out of nowhere. Okay, Robert. So exactly, yeah. So I know I saw something about that. The Blue Jays did make him a long-term deal. It has to be, in my opinion, how we always say, the Mets have to pay above and beyond because it's like a Mets tax. The Blue Jays have to overpay, extremely overpay, because you're sending a player to Canada and nobody really wants to play for the Blue Jays. Let's be honest about that. Big names, they've been trying to get big names for years. And they can't get them. For years, they've been trying. The players usually don't want to go there, especially the big players. So, and New York 29, I agree with you. The Blue Jays are a World Series caliber team. They were a half a step away from winning the World Series. But again, we look at it as fans saying, well, that team's one of the better teams in baseball. They're legit. They're a top contender. But a lot of these players don't look at it like that. Like a lot of great players, and we're gonna put Kyle Tucker in that great player category, right? One of the better players in the game. They look at it as I'm the guy that can put this team and make them even better, or make them better, right? I'm the guy that can take them to the next level. He might not think the Blue Jays want to go to the Blue Jays for many reasons. Not everybody wants to go to Canada. It is another country. I know it's like a hop and a skip to the United States, but still, people don't want to go. Some players don't want to go to Canada, don't want to go to Toronto. It's a great city, but not everybody wants to go there. So it is what it is. Like I said, obviously we all would be ecstatic if tomorrow happens and the Mets land Kyle Tucker. Who cares what the contract is? Like, honestly, we over exaggerate and overhype these contracts. At the end of the day, who gives a shit? Nobody cares. If he comes here and performs, nobody cares. Nobody gives a damn at all. And you know what? Yeah, I'll give credit to David Stearns if he lands them. But you know what? If Kyle Tucker goes to the Blue Jays for the 6-7 years or whatever the long-term deal is, Stearns needs to get a ton of blame, because this is once again David Stearns dipping his toe in the water and not jumping in. So it's nice that he's in, but let's make no mistake about it. He's only in the market because the market is dictating David Stearns to be in it. Not because, he's smarter than everybody else. No, he's not. We didn't even have conversations about them being in on Kyle Tucker. Now, the market did come back, but let's not act like David Stearns was trying to pursue Tucker the whole time and waited out the game. They were always in on Bellinger. They were talking about, Austin Hayes. They were talking about everybody else other than Kyle Tucker. So, regardless, if he gets him, he'll get the credit for getting him, no doubt about it. But because he uses his little, plan and scheme of let the market dictate what he does, because he's not an aggressive GM. He's not. If the market doesn't dictate the market dictates what he does, and he'll never go outside the box. And that's good in some areas. I'm not going to overpay for a C-level player. That is when that type of plan or philosophy works. Not when it's a player like Kyle Tucker. Not when it's a player like the top pitcher or anything like that. Anybody who's a top player, those philosophies should go out the window. I'm not saying you should overpay on everybody, but you know what? Sometimes you have to. And you better not lose Kyle Tucker to a 6-7 year deal, because your philosophy doesn't dictate that type of deal. It's stupid. And he does, because he's one of those guys that would jump at a deal, right? Thinks it's a good deal. Now, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's a big risk. We all know that. But doing these short-term deals is a big risk, because ultimately you're waiting for the player to come to you. That's not how you aggressively pull off an offseason. Like I said, David Stearns is on the verge of having one of the worst all-time off seasons in Mets history. Make no mistake about it. You can't completely break up the core in one full swoop of an off season. Fan favorites, and then not do anything to bring in better talent or good talent. You can't break up the core completely and not bring anything worth getting. He's on the verge here. Because I'm going to tell you this right now. he can't lose Tucker and then, beg on his hands and knees to go to try to get Cody Bellinger. Like, because at that point, you're going to lose all type of, any type of respect or confidence Met fans had in you. And then you're going to what? Try to outbid the Yankees at that point for Cody Bellinger? It's stupid. Why would you even bother outbidding and go long-term for Cody Bellinger when you could have went long-term with Kyle Tucker, who's a couple of years younger, who's a better player? That's what I don't understand. Like, if you're willing to go 4 years, $50 million, then just go 6 or 7 years for $40 million. Like, if you want, this is what I don't understand. If you want the player, go get him. I'm not saying you have to overpay for everybody. I'm not saying that. You always try to look for a deal. But when you realize that's not going to happen, like, why lose Tucker possibly to the Dodgers? Why lose Tucker to the Blue Jays? There's no reason to. If you're willing to pay $50 million a year, then sweeten the deal, give him an extra few years, and go $38 million, $40 million. Why not? Match the Blue Jays offer. Who do you think he'll take? You think he'll actually go to Canada? Because if he was that serious about going to Canada, he would have took that long-term deal already. He knows the Mets and the Dodgers aren't going long-term. Unless there's another secret team out there that we don't know about that he's talking to, let's just say, to keep up the conversation, that it's the Dodgers, Mets, and Blue Jays, the only teams that are in on him. He knows the Blue Jays are the only long-term deal. So why hasn't he taken it yet? He knows what the Mets and Dodgers are going to do. They're going short-term. So it's either he does not want to go to Canada, because it's not like the Blue Jays aren't top contenders. They are. The Mets, I don't know what they are, to be quite honest with you. Because you can't get, again, this is another situation. You can't sign Kyle Tucker and not get a big-time pitcher, get a top starter. Because it's kind of like what happened last year. You bring back Pete Alonso, you sign Juan Soto, and you neglect the rotation. That you half-ass the rotation. If you get Tucker, you better get a top-line starting pitcher. Peralta, Valdez, Skubal, Joe Ryan, whoever. You can't stop there. And Explosive, well, here's the thing. I don't think the Mets leaked the contract. I think the agent leaked the contract. And I think this right here is a perfect example of the agent trying to get leverage on the Toronto Blue Jays. Because the agent knows the Mets aren't going long-term or the Dodgers going long-term. So what do? You leak out the AAV to scare the Blue Jays, to get them to probably up the offer. That's probably what the weight is right now. So, well, Explosive, I don't think the Dodgers are that serious, to be quite honest with you. I think they gave probably a solid offer, but it's not better than the Mets, and it's obviously not better than the Blue Jays. I think the Dodgers are going off of their brand at this point, which is fine. The Yankees used to do that for years, right? In the 2000s, early 2000s, the Yankees lived off their brand. They didn't have to overpay. They just, came up with a solid contract, a fair contract, and let the pinstripes talk for themselves. That is what the Dodgers are doing now. So, and yeah, Classic, exactly. Yeah, I think this is going to happen probably before the end of the week, like 48, max 72 hours. So again, I'm glad I'm off on Thursday and Friday. So hopefully, if anything does happen, it's later in the afternoon tomorrow, so I can be on Kyle Tucker watch. So, give you the breaking news right away and we'll talk about it. But this is something where you have to really put your mind to with Kyle Tucker in this situation, because it is a very weird situation. Because I don't know. I think the leak of the AAV did come from Kyle Tucker's agent. because it makes no sense. Why would the Mets leak it? That wouldn't make sense. We know they don't leak anything. They never leak anything. Anytime the Mets make a signing or a trade, you never hear about it. And it just happens. So it was clear it's probably the agent that leaked it to probably have leverage on either any team, the Dodgers or the Blue Jays or whoever else. And that is why I think people are thinking that Kyle Tucker's going to make a decision soon, which makes sense because, again, there's only so much negotiations you can do. The teams are only going to go to a certain point because they got to move on. The Mets have to move on, the Blue Jays, the Dodgers, everybody. They have to make a decision because the teams can't wait and then lose out on, the next guy available. That's the scary part. Because, again, the team that loses out on Tucker is probably now going to try to go after Bellinger. And now you're going to have to go after Bellinger a little more aggressively, where it does not make, to me, it don't make sense in a Mets situation, because if you're going to be aggressive because you lost out on Tucker, you should have been more aggressive to get Tucker. This is why it just doesn't make sense. So we'll see. Yeah, Truman, they'll pay Tucker twice that of Alonso, but again, can we stop acting like the Mets actually won with Pete Alonso here? They did a lot of losing. Not that Pete Alonso was the only issue. There was many other issues. But again, more people blame Lindor than they do Alonso for the losing over the last 5 years. So that's the problem. Like, it is the problem. So who cares? Right? There's always players, like, it is what it is, because again, the biggest contract this year, next year somebody's going to beat it. That's just the way sports goes. So it is what it is. Dolo, what does it see? Met fans are saying that this Tucker deal is a slam dunk because Dodgers, Blue Jays don't want to lose another pick. I mean, that could be a possibility. I mean, yeah, but they put offers on the table. Again, the Blue Jays gave the long-term offer. Again, it's not higher AAV than the Mets or the Dodgers. So, yeah, I mean, that could be a possibility, but I don't see the Blue Jays worrying about a pick when they signed Dylan Cease to an astronomical contract. I know they might not want to lose another pick, but if you're going to go that far and you already made the World Series last year, this is what I don't get with organizations. I understand you don't want to lose picks and all that stuff that, I think it's overrated, to be quite honest with you. Like, if you're trying to win, do it. Because, again, I don't want to hear about picks when you're in September and you're fighting for a wild card and you happen to miss the playoffs. I don't care about a pick. Like, I don't want to hear that nonsense. Nobody gives a shit about a pick in the middle of August when we're playing games. Not one fan is going to say, oh, man, we should have never signed Kyle Tucker because the Mets lost that pick. Nobody cares. They'll care about the contract, but they're not going to talk about the pick. So here's the problem. I'd rather lose the pick knowing that I have one of the better players in baseball on my team. That's it. Fairly simple. But again, this short-term deal nonsense can very much bite David Stearns in the ass, because he better land Tucker at this point, because everybody knows you're very much in on Kyle Tucker. You can't half-ass this and do a short-term deal, and he chooses the Blue Jays because it's a 6-7 year deal, and you just look like a fool because all you did was dip your toe in the water again, and you don't jump in. So the lack of aggressiveness, again, made you lose out on a top player. And now you're going to be, being more aggressive on Bellinger or somebody else that you shouldn't, like a Luis Robert? It's silly. Like, it's only money at this point. I'd rather have Tucker than Bellinger. And I'd rather have Tucker than Luis Robert or anybody else. So, and Brad, it might just be a 3-year deal, but there's a couple of reports stating that it could be a 4-year deal. Now, again, there's a lot of different details in those contracts. Like if it's a 4-year deal, maybe they give him an opt-out in the second year. If it's a 3-year deal, maybe they give an opt-out after the first year. So there's a lot of details here. Is there deferments? Is the Dodger deal have deferments, which it probably does? The Blue Jays deal, does it have a ton of deferments? Maybe the Mets deal doesn't have any deferments, but it has opt-outs. There's so many different ways everybody can manipulate the contract. So, the details about the money, the AAV is cool. I like to hear about that. And the possibility of a 3-4-year deal. But that doesn't tell the whole story. That's the problem. Like, again, they're doing their jobs. They're trying to figure it out. And I don't think the agent is going to leak that out, because I do think the agent leaked the AAV that the Mets offered for leverage for another team. But he's probably not going to, leak the years and the opt-outs and all that stuff. So, yeah, Dolo, I don't listen to Stearns anymore. I really don't. Like, too many people listen to David Stearns. And, again, you guys know what I say all the time about David Stearns. The guy is a propaganda machine. The guy talks a lot, but never says nothing. And then when he does a bad job, he makes sure he gets his face in front of a camera and spills the propaganda saying why all this is going to be okay, even though he failed, just like the trade deadline last year. So I don't listen to him anymore. I don't. I can't stand his voice. I don't even waste my time listening to him. Because if the Mets sign Kyle Tucker, all you're going to hear, he's a genius, smart guy. Look what he did. He played the market, blah, blah, blah. He got lucky. Can we be honest about that? Everybody knows Hector. He put on X today about, everybody calling him a boy genius and this and that and, all that. He's going to look very smart. And I says, will he? Because at the end of the day, it's very much luck. He didn't fall into it. He didn't, just sit there and, let Tucker come to him. Like, how many more times are you going to get lucky? And it might work out in the Mets' favor if you land Tucker and he plays well. But let's not act like this guy's a genius when he's letting the market dictate what he does, not being aggressive to dictate the market. He's not doing that right now. Like, it's a dangerous game to play. Because if you lose out on him, his philosophy didn't work again. And this is a guy that does not change his philosophy no matter if it works or not. He sticks to it. And that's a problem, because you can't keep on losing out on top players when other teams around you are getting better. It's hard to win when you don't add the talent, but the other teams around you do. And then what do? What are you going to talk about Carson Bench when you lose out on Tucker? Because I can guarantee you, book it right now. It is 6:59, Tuesday, January 13th. I can guarantee you, let's say tomorrow, Kyle Tucker signs with the Blue Jays at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I guarantee you, you will find a clip somewhere of David Stearns talking on SNY or somewhere, him talking about the goddamn prospects. And, there's other guys on the market. That is exactly what he's going to say. Why? Because he's going to throw his propaganda because he failed again. This is what he does. So, will I give him a golf clap if he gets Tucker? Yes. Not because he did a good job, because let's be honest, it fell on his lap. Didn't take a lot of work. I'd like to see him be aggressive and make a bigger deal and get the guy. You clearly want Kyle Tucker, sign him. Go get him. Don't beat around the bush so another team can swoop in. Didn't we see that happen with Diaz? Let's not have that happen now with Tucker. Don't leave room for another team to swoop in and get the guy you want. Because doing these short-term deals is leaving an opening for another team to make a counter offer or even a better their offer where you lose the player. That is not smart business. I don't care what type of business it is. You can't always keep on playing that game because you continue to get burned and you still do the same thing. What is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again? That is David Stearns. Consistently does the same thing. Short-term deals, talks about run prevention till the cows come home, and it's the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah, Frank, but it wasn't about Diaz wanted to leave or not. The Mets left the opening when they told him, hey, we're going to give you this many years for this much money. And says, but we're willing to go a little bit more. So what did you do? You allowed Diaz to find somebody with a better offer. This is your guy. If you knew you were going to be able to go a little further, then give him the deal. Don't let him make a decision based on another team's offer. They should have offered him 3 for $75 and call it a day. But no, David Stearns wanted to save a few $1,000,000 and he got burned badly. And he got embarrassed because of it. And that is why Diaz only took $3 million more. Because Diaz was sick of the nitpicking and the negotiation tactics of David Stearns, which I don't blame him. Even Pete Alonso didn't even bother wasting his time. Couldn't wait to get the hell out of here because why would you want to negotiate with an asshole like that? Because he just seems like the type that sits here eating a donut and drinking his coffee with his Ivy League ring and acting like this is what I'm doing. You're not smarter than me, and that's it. Why would you want to deal with that stuff? If you're a player, I would have took the Dodger deal as well. Why am I going to go back? Oh, you don't think of me. You don't think about me being a very important to your team. That you're going to lowball me. And I know me and Chris, when this happened, he 100% blamed Diaz that he wanted out and wanted to, book it to the Dodgers. But that wasn't the case. The negotiations of David Stearns caused Diaz to get frustrated for no reason. You lost Diaz for what, $7 or $8 million more that you could have offered him the first time? Because you knew he was going to get more elsewhere. But you allowed him to do it. And it just bit you in the ass big time. It embarrassed you. It made you look stupid. And then that whole dream of having Williams Diaz in back-to-back 8th and 9th became a pipe dream. Because you got way over your head, making you think you were the smartest person in the room, and you got burned. It's the same concept here with Kyle Tucker. The market allowed David Stearns to be involved in this Kyle Tucker situation. It's not like he forced this to happen. He sat there, and everybody's like, "Oh, he's smart for sitting there." No, he's not doing anything. He's doing a Rubik's Cube. Just sitting there, doing nothing. Waiting, oh, look at this. Kyle Tucker's market's coming back. Great. So it still makes a strong possibility he won't be a Met. Because if he's not a Met, now what do? You're gonna go be aggressive because you failed yet again on a lesser player? That is how you get burned again. That is how you fall into a bad situation where you might have to give an extra year or two to Cody Bellinger. Or you might have to overpay for a trade for Luis Robert. Or get an Austin Hayes or a Brandon Donovan or somebody like that. Or sign Harrison Bader, our old friend. But Mike, I wasn't talking about last year. I wasn't talking about 2 years ago with Pete Alonso at all. There was no market for Pete Alonso at all. Little different than Kyle Tucker because he does have a market. It's a small market, but it's a market nonetheless where somebody can outbid you. David Stearns knew there wasn't a market, and most people knew there wasn't a market for Pete Alonso. Like he came out of one of his worst seasons of his career. There's already talk about him around the league. A lot of people don't see him as a difference maker on a team. That's a fact. There wasn't even a robust market for him this year. One team, the Orioles, that became a desperate team because they needed a bat. They were a team that woefully underperformed, just like the Mets last year. They got desperate, and they gave him the years he was looking for. Let's not act like there was 7 teams going after Pete Alonso. There was the Orioles. Pete Alonso couldn't wait to go to the winter meetings to speak to the Orioles because he got excited because there was a team actually interested in an actual deal that he was looking for. So let's not act like it was. Let's see. I'm sorry. I don't know. Did I miss a comment, Dolo? My bad. there's over 300 people in X and YouTube altogether, so I'm trying to just catch up to the comments. Yeah, well, I don't really know if Boston wanted Pete. I don't believe that for a second. I think they wanted Alex Bregman, and they screwed that up. Again, this is a prime example. Here we go, guys. Look at what happened with the Bregman situation. Do you see how the Red Sox fans are killing the Red Sox because of what happened with Alex Bregman? The Red Sox offered him a deal, left the window for some negotiations when it comes to a little bit more money. And what happened? The Cubs swooped in, and Alex Bregman didn't even bother to call the Red Sox again. Exactly the same thing with Diaz. Because the Red Sox had a very similar offer than the Cubs, but the Cubs gave a little bit more money. And Alex Bregman was not going back to the Red Sox to have a conversation to negotiate. When you have a hard hand in negotiations and you got a firm line and players know you're not going to move that far, they're not going to come back and deal with the nonsense. That is why the Red Sox lost Alex Bregman. And let's be honest, the Red Sox weren't really serious on Pete Alonso. They were talking about a 2-3 year deal, just like the Mets were 2 years ago. So let's not act like the Red Sox were that serious. So, yeah, okay, but again, see, this is the problem, Gates. Boston didn't give Bregman the no trade clause. Well, they're idiots. They're idiots. Like, things like that in a contract are so stupid to lose a player based on that. Like, it's just stupid. It makes no sense. Bregman will make you even better. And because you didn't want to do a no trade clause, you lose the player. And now you have to fight other teams for other players now. Now, are they in on another info? Because Arenado just went to the Diamondbacks. So that could have been an option for them. Now, where are they going? Nico Horner? Something like that? But it's like, I just don't understand it. Like, stupid things like that. Like, a few $1 million. I'm not talking about the lesser players, but the players that are very good to really good to great. Don't mess around with a couple $1 million because you're going to get burned by another team. It's a prime example of the Red Sox screwing that up. I agree, Strike. I wanted Bregman a couple of years ago. I think the Mets should have got him a couple of years ago, honestly. 100% I would have done that. 100%. Oh. Truman, you're funny. But the Cubs overpaid for Bregman, but they got Havoc, exactly. I've said that, and if you followed my channel, you've been watching my shows, you know. Don't care if you overpay. If you want the guy that badly, sometimes you do it. Not all the time, but you should. The Mets lost Diaz for a few $1,000,000. Bregman, the Red Sox lost Bregman for no trade clause and a couple of $1,000,000 more. That stopped them from getting a really good player that was already on your team, which is even more dumb. Joe, Bregman was hurt last year. All right. The guy, I'd rather have him on my team than a Brett Beatty or a Mark Vientos. I tell you that right now. Because Alex Bregman, did you see him for the Red Sox? How did he perform when he was healthy, when he was in the playoffs? The guy performs. That's what I want him to do, what he needs to do. Just like I said with the Mets, you want to make the playoffs because Francisco Lindor shows up in the playoffs. Juan Soto shows up in the playoffs. You want those guys to get you want to get into playoffs. Sorry, let me just put my charger on. My damn thing's gonna die. You get into the playoffs because of those guys, to make sure those guys are in there because those guys perform. And Dolo, I'm not going to say Bregman is better than Tucker now, but there is an argument. There definitely is an argument. Bregman's a better defender than Tucker. Tucker's a really good defender, but Bregman's like top line Gold Glove. I think Bregman, I don't know about his bat being like top tier, but it's still damn good. Like I said, there's an argument to be had who's good, Bregman or Tucker. You know, Tucker's obviously younger, so you probably want the younger guy, but I wanted Bregman for years. Like, instead of playing around with these stupid-ass prospects at third base and continue to see them fail, because how many more third basemen do we need to fail until we actually get a legitimate third baseman? Right? So, there you go. Mike, acting like dead money at the end of the contract doesn't matter. No, I'm not. But let's be honest. How do you get great players? You don't give them 2-year deals. A lot of them don't take it. And I'm going to tell you this right now. If you dink the Kyle Tucker contract from the New York Mets, either if 3 or 4 years, who cares about the money? If it's 3 or 4 years, you think there's not going to be opt-outs? Of course there is. But back in the contracts, yeah, they might suck at the end. But you're not worrying about the back end of the contract. What you're hoping for a guy like Kyle Tucker or a guy like Alex Bregman or a guy like Cody Bellinger, but let's put Cody Bellinger in it too. Like the top players in the league. Cody Bellinger isn't that. But for those guys, you want them at least 70% of that contract. Let's say it's a 7-year deal. 4 years of that contract, you want that guy to be the best player he can be and bring this team to places they never been. World Series, playoffs, championship. Yeah, Dolo, exactly. 100%. The Rangers did exactly that. They knew they were going to get their asses handed to them in the back end of those contracts. They knew they were going to, but you know what? They went for it. They got the World Series, and nobody gives a shit. And hey, they actually got rid of Simeon's contract. Yeah, they got Nimmo's contract, but look what they were trying to do. They were trying to get a little bit younger and a better bat, which Simeon wasn't the better bat. So they got their championship. So everything else after that, and this is the problem. Like, everybody wants to win, but they don't want to win with the cost. Like, nobody's going to give a shit, especially Met fans. If you win a World Series, you really think I give a shit about 2031 on the back end of that deal, that's why you have the richest owner in baseball. So that can be bought out. If you need to trade him, you pay off some of that money and you get a prospect. That's how you do it. And again, if the Mets get Tucker on a 4-year deal or a 3-year deal, $150, $200 million, great. I'm okay with that. I'm not against short-term deals. But to lose a player because you're too picky on giving long-term deals, then you're the problem. That's the problem. Sure, no name. If Bregman gets injured, that deal will be blown up. Well, guess what? You can say that about any big contract. If Dylan Cease throws one pitch on opening day and blows out his arm, that's a bad deal, no? You could say that about any player. So you know what, no name? Let's not sign nobody. Right? Anybody can get hurt. If you're going to worry about an injury, then first off, you shouldn't be a GM. You shouldn't own a team. And you shouldn't be a fan of baseball. Because those are the worst type of people that can be interested in baseball at all. If you're a GM, owner, fan, if you're going to worry about an injury, like, oh, I don't want to sign Bregman because if he gets injured, you could say that about any player in baseball, any player in sports. You can't think about the injury aspect or possibility. Because if you do, you'll drive yourself nuts. Anybody can get injured. And the Yankees just made a trade. Is it like a big trade or is it like... Let's see. What did the Yankees do? The Yankees just made a trade. Did I miss it? Weathers, is that the reliever? Or I'm not thinking straight right now. I don't know. I don't even see it on X. All right. Well, whatever. Yankees got Ryan Weathers for 4 minor leaguers. Oh, that's the young starter, right? If I'm not mistaken. Or who? Why? Well, I can picture his face. Isn't that the kid with the long blonde hair? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I know what you're talking about. I think I know the guy because Weathers sounds familiar. I don't follow no Yankee people, so it's like, like somebody national's got to like report it. All right, hold on. What the hell's going on here? Let me just see something. I'm curious now. Okay, I can't find it. Whatever. Ryan went for Alfred and Brendan Jones, Dylan Lewis. It's not really that important, those guys. I mean, he's under control, probably. I mean, it's not a bad move, right? You never have enough starting pitching, so. Cubs might win the World Series, but no risk management. Okay.
Did you see the Yankee one?
I did.
No,
Weathers. Yeah. Yep. my dad just came in the room and said, "Hey, you see what the Yankees just did?" Let's see. Yeah, but it's not a lot of big prospects, right? I mean, I know one of them might be a pretty good prospect, but again, this is everybody overrates these prospects. I swear to God, they do. Like, honestly, I don't care. Like, again, have the Mets won in most of our lifetimes? No. If you win a World Series, who cares? Who cares? Like, worry about that in year 3 after the World Series. Worry about that. Like, no, me and Chris didn't have a falling out. Yeah, exactly, Strike. Like, the Marlins always want quantity. They always want quality so that hopefully one of them hit. Like, that's what it is. Like, we know the Marlins don't pay nobody. So they're gonna hoard the prospects and get as many prospects as they can, play them all, and see which ones actually play out, right? All right, so a 15 prospect, 16 prospect, and a 23 prospect. I mean, in the Yankees farm system, that's bad because they don't got a good farm system. So, they're somewhat top heavy at like the top 5 after that. So it's like those are not prospects. I mean they're all right, fine. So no name. Which deal would you do? Let me see if I can click on a comment now if it works. All right, there we go. Rob, if you were the GM, which deal would you do? Arenado or Bregman deal? Bregman. 100% Bregman. Why? Because I don't even know if Arenado has 1 year left, let alone 5 or 6. I see Bregman as a guy that can still be a good hitter 3-4 years down the line, because he's a guy that can, I think, puts the bat on the ball more. I like him more. I like Nolan Arenado, but I was always a Bregman fan, so maybe I'm a little bit biased. But like, I guess you're probably talking about because the Diamondbacks gave up nothing, and they're paying what, $11 million on the contract. I mean, that's fine, but again, you're bringing in Arenado that is depleting when you already got Marcus Semien who's depleting. Like, no, I'd rather have Alex Bregman. Alex Bregman has so much more upside than Nolan Arenado. Tucker equals Jason Boyd 2.0. Jason Bay was never the player of Kyle Tucker at all. At all. Jason Bay was a solid ball player for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He got the deal from the Mets because of his performance with the Red Sox in the postseason. But let's not act like Jason Bay was like a world beater, like one of the best players in the game, because he really wasn't. He was a solid ball player for Pittsburgh, really good ball player, and he just went batshit crazy in the playoffs for the Red Sox, and that's why he got that deal from the Mets. Tucker's a totally different player. Tucker's a World Series champion. What was Jason Bay? He was a one-hit wonder in the postseason, and he played for a team that never won anything in the Pittsburgh Pirates. So he had no pressure at all. Tucker's been in the postseason so many years. Better player than Jason Bay. Better defender. Better hitter. World champion. Clutch performer. Huge difference between the two guys. Let's see. No name. Did Bregman ever win a platinum glove? No, but he has gold gloves. And you know what Bregman also has? Good amount of World Series championships, right? Yeah, I care about that. And look, you're comparing two guys who are very good ball players. Arenado's what? He just looks done. Bregman doesn't look done. Because when Bregman was healthy, he performed. Arenado, healthy, doesn't do nothing as much anymore offensively. I think Arenado's a great glove still, but Bregman's not too far behind. I mean, let's not act like Bregman's a butcher. He ain't Mark Vientos at third base. All right, he's a badass. I'm sorry, I'm taking the badass in the postseason, because at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Give me a guy that is a clutch performer in the postseason, and I'll take him every single time, than a guy who barely makes the playoffs and doesn't have great numbers in the playoffs, by the way, and is a guy who is declining. Give me the player that performs in the postseason every single time. I said that for years. That is why I wanted Juan Soto. That is why I was excited about Francisco Lindor. And you know what? As much as I bashed Pete Alonso, he played damn well in the postseason. Give me guys that perform in the postseason over anybody. Because at the end of the day, when you make the playoffs, those are the guys you're going to count on the most. Yeah, at times it's going to be the Tommy Edmonds of the world that, shocks the world and performs like an MVP in the postseason. You're going to have guys like that. Wasn't it Spears for the Red Sox that many years ago? That, was definitely a one-hit wonder. Nobody even heard of him, and he went crazy in the postseason. But at the end of the day, the guys that are clutch all the time, Tucker, Soto, Lindor, Bregman. Oh, the guy I wanted over Brandon Nimmo, George Springer. Did you see the postseason he had? That's why I want him. That's why I wanted him over Brandon Nimmo. You can go back, 4 years ago? Maybe 5? I think I just started my channel. I wanted Springer over Nimmo. Why? Because Nimmo's a good player. George Springer is a clutch player, World Series champ. That's the guy I want. They perform in the biggest moments. Those guys they always show up. It's rare that they don't. That is why. David Eckstein, exactly. Exactly. You can go on and on for days. Strike, I agree with you, though. But you know what, though? When they needed him the most, and let's be honest, the 2 years that he was crap, the Blue Jays barely didn't even make the playoffs. And when they did, they were hanging on by a thread. But last year, what happened? They got into the playoffs. They won a division, and Springer went nuts. Even though those guys are old and older, they found the fountain of youth in the postseason. Like they get that extra burst of energy. I'm not saying it's always going to happen or they're going to do it every single year of that contract. But you know what? I guarantee you, for the Bregman contract, I guarantee you'll probably get about 4 damn years where you're not going to complain about him at all. He's going to be one of the better players on your team. He's going to give you a Gold Glove caliber, and then we're ready to go. That's what they do. And I see people texting me all over the place now. Let's see. All right, so again, Jesse Rogers of ESPN just reported that the Blue Jays did make a long-term offer to Kyle Tucker. That has been confirmed now. So, once again, we always knew the Blue Jays were going to make a long-term deal. But how serious is Kyle Tucker going to Canada? That is what we need to know. Because if he only cares about a long-term deal and he wants long-term security, the Mets don't have a shot, which is embarrassing because you're willing to give $50 million for 3 or 4 years, but you can lower the AAV and give the guy another couple of years. So, shit. And yes, Classic, you did. I'm just going over the reports. It just popped up. Another one popped up with another reporter. So, again, more confirmations from legitimate reporters is always needed. How many times we've been on the shows and, we're getting half-assed reports from people that don't really count. All right. Well, Dolo, maybe she doesn't. I don't know. Again, we only think about the player, but some have wives, kids, to uproot your family to another country. I know, again, it's right over the border, but it is another country. It's a big acclamation, especially if you have kids. And again, I think Tucker has, who knows? I don't know. But still, it's not always just about what the player wants. It's what the family wants and the wife and the kids and all that nonsense as well. So, there's a lot going in there go involved in that. So, all right. So let's get to the Bellinger situation as a backup plan. I'd be very pissed off if you lose out on Tucker because you're afraid to go a couple of more years, even though you're going to have a lesser AAV. And then you go get Bellinger or try to get Bellinger because you're clearly going to overpay for Bellinger because, well, Stearns once again loses out on a potential star player. Frank, so Rob, you were willing to sacrifice tomorrow just to have today. Yes. I think we sacrificed 40 years for tomorrow. That's why. That's why. That's it. Do we need to sacrifice 41 years? You want to keep on adding to that total? Let's not act like we won a World Series 4 years ago, guys. We'd probably be a lot more happier. We haven't won in 40 years. That has to mean something to people. Yes, I want to win a World Series in 2026, not the potential of winning the World Series in 2030. Why do people not care about the year that's coming up, but worry about years down the line? If you win, just like the Dodgers did, just like the Yankees did in the late 90s, when you win and you win consistently, guess what happens? It's a lot easier to get the best players on your team because you might not have to overpay. You might have the brand, plus, of course, a fair deal to get those players. Winning brings excitement. Do you really think Yoenis Cespedes. Do you really think Juan Soto came to the New York Mets because it was a beautiful city? Because Queens is awesome? Because, oh my God, New York? Or was it because the excitement that happened in 2024 and the Mets were the story of baseball, you didn't think that had something to do along with, all that money, all those years in a suite? Sure. No, the Yankees, no. Don't give me that farm system bullshit at all. Sorry. The Dodgers did not do that. How many homegrown guys are on the Dodgers? 2? And the other 23 are bought or traded for? Please, don't give me that nonsense with the Dodgers. The Dodgers traded most of their farm system to bring in most of these players. They've lost draft picks to sign players. The Yankees, yes, they had the core 4. But everybody forgets they brought in David Wells. They brought in David Cone. They brought in David Justice, Scott Brocious, Paul O'Neill, Tino Martinez. Does everybody forget about that? Does everybody forget about that? Let's not act like the core 4 was the only one that did everything. Tino Martinez was extremely important to their dynasty. Paul O'Neill, David Justice. You want to talk about Luis Soho? Scott Brocious. I can go on and on. Chuck Knobloch. You want to go on and on? Like, let's not act like that. Yeah, Strawberry and Gooden. I mean, they weren't huge keys to that puzzle, but they helped. But let's not act like the farm system made the Yankees what they were, only. Because there was a lot of deals in those years. The Yankees would have never won in 96. Or was it 98? Whatever year they got David Justice. I forgot what year it was. It might have, I think it was 96 if I'm not mistaken, or 98. One of those 2 years. They got David Justice. That basically put them to the top. Like, I'm not saying the prospects or the potential of them being good. Sure, we can definitely use them 100%. But let's not act like you don't need proven players. Thank you, Q. 98. That was the year they faced the Padres, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, of course, Mariano for sure. But did you see the other relievers that they brought in via trade or via free agency? Right? It wasn't just Mariano. They had a good bullpen. Oh yeah, but that's the thing, Mike. Those pieces, like, why do we act like when you think of the dynasty, right? Everybody mentions the core four, but everybody talks about Tina Martinez, Bernie Williams. Paul O'Neill, those type of guys, you know. And forget it, David Cohn, David Wells, all those guys, right? Those guys were a huge part of it. You know, everybody forgets that part. Let's see. Yeah, Frank, I agree with you, right? But again, look at that. Look at the team around them too. They were a lot of them were a bunch of rookies or 2-year guys, 2 or 3. Like, they weren't big time veterans. Look at the team around them too. Like, there was a lot of veteran presence around them too. So, and I'm not saying you can't have a core of guys that are top prospects from your farm system. I am not saying that at all. I mean, you got Beatty as your third baseman. You got Francisco Alvarez. Pretty good chance Carson Benz is probably going to try to make this team either in left field or center field, depending on what happens, what the Mets do, either Tucker Bellinger or somebody else. Like, but sometimes you also got to add great talent or proven talent next to those guys. Because if the farm system is the only thing that matter, why don't that makes the difference between championship teams? Why do the Marlins never win? Why do the Rays never win? Why do the Reds, the Brewers, constantly using prospects? They don't win. Why? Because they don't get the proven talent. The Pirates, you want to go on and on? We can do the same things over and over again with these players, with these teams. Why do you think those teams don't win? Ever. And I think the problem with the Mets for a long time is that they tried to walk that narrow line of doing one or the other, and they never do enough one way or the other, and it ultimately burns them, in my opinion. Right? We can go back to the late 90s with Generation K, or early 90s with Generation K. Right? They try to go to that youth movement with the starting pitching. Didn't work. It was a fucking disaster. Then it started to come up with, how did the Mets get good in the late 90s? Well, it wasn't the young people. Who was it? It was Piazza. It was Ventura, Cliff Floyd, Delgado, all these, that was later on, in 06, 05, 06 and stuff like that. But, the Todd Zeals of the world, like, we forget about all this. The best years of the New York Mets, when they had success in the late 90s into the early 2000s, obviously 05 to 08 year was David Wright, it was Jose Reyes, but we know what was on that team. I mean, geez, Paul LaDuca, Cliff Floyd, Delgado, I mean, Ventura, all those guys, you know what I'm saying? So, like, you can always put the youth movement in there, and they can be the main guys on your team, but you got to get proven players in here. Go back to 2015. The Mets had a lot of kids from their farm system, but what happened? It took trade deadlines to get Yoenis Cespedes, Clippard, extra, Kelly Johnson, Juan Uribe, a couple other bullpen pieces, to fit the mold and to fit that team. And I feel like the Mets always walk that narrow line and go one way or the other too much, and it ultimately hurts them. Now, there's so many different ways to win a championship, right? Sometimes it takes, somebody going crazy that didn't think we're going to go nuts in a postseason. Sometimes your stars show up. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's the lesser players. Sometimes it's your starting pitching. Sometimes it's your bullpen. 2 years ago, the Dodgers had no starting pitching. They were using bullpen out of the ass. And they won a World Series. Last year, the Dodgers had no bullpen, but they had 27 starters that pitched in the bullpen as well. So they never had to use their terrible bullpen. They went to their starters. So at the end of the day, there's so many different ways to win. You could say one way, nobody's right or wrong. Nobody's wrong in that aspect, because you can be right, I can be right, we can both be wrong. There's so many ways to win. But baseball is beautiful because it's 162 games. When you get into the postseason, it's a long, grueling postseason. Obviously got to win 2 games in a wild card, 3 games in the NLDS, NLCS, World Series. Obviously, you might win a division, have one of the best records, start in the NLDS, but it's a long process. Shit happens, especially in a short series. The best team not always wins. And that is why baseball is beautiful. But there's ways to win, but it's usually different. Like, the Dodgers didn't win the World Series because, their youth movement. Let's be honest about that. There you go. Like, develop your farm system, no doubt about it. But you know what great teams do? You know what successful franchises do? You develop your farm system to do 2 things. One, you pinpoint your best guys that you believe is going to help this team short and long term. The other part of your farm system is tradable assets to bring in proven talent. That is what successful teams do. The Mets, right now, don't give big contracts and are not willing to trade their assets. So they're in between right now. This is the problem with David Stearns. He's walking that narrow line and is not really going one way or the other. We talked about this on the last hot stove with me and Chris. Either go the youth movement and don't even bother with any of these top players on the market and just go with the youth movement, see what happens. I'm on board, but have a plan to do that. Don't get Kyle Tucker and don't get and let's say they get Kyle Tucker, but they don't do anything with the starting pitching, like top line. Then what are we doing here? You're falling into the same problem you did last year. You brought in big bats. You neglected the starting pitching. And then you're in the same predicament you were last year. Come trade deadline when, guess what you got to need? A fucking starting pitcher. And David Stearns' track record so far is he's not willing to trade at the deadline and give that price to get a starting pitcher. Because it ain't going to get cheaper. So, with that said, are the Mets going to get Peralta? Who the hell knows, right? We all started to heat up. We saw the reports and all that, and then nothing. Then absolutely nothing. All of a sudden, Kyle Tucker rumors just started taking over. So, with the Mets, right now, they're very much in on Kyle Tucker. I don't like the approach they're doing with Kyle Tucker because I think you can easily lose him to the Blue Jays because Stearns has a stick up his ass with short-term deals. And you know what? He better not lose Kyle Tucker. I'm telling you right now. If he does, make sure you're on the next stream if he goes to the Blue Jays or the Dodgers or anywhere else but the Mets. David Stearns would get obliterated by me. I do it enough. But you can't keep on losing talent. It's hurting your team. Because all you're doing is not getting better. The whole fucking point of an offseason is make your team better. Do that. Stop nitpicking and doing a half-assed job, and then you're going to talk about the prospects. I don't want to hear it. If you want the prospects to play, don't sign Tucker. Don't sign Bellinger or Valdez. Don't trade for Peralta or Terry Skubal. Bring up Tong, bring up Spro, leave McLean in the rotation, bring up Benj, bring up this guy, bring up that guy, and play them. Make a decision. Because you're either rebuilding or you're actually trying to win. It's very hard to do both. Because you can't tell me about these prospects that you love so much, but none of them are proven and tell me and speak your propaganda nonsense and say, oh, well, these guys are supposed to be good. And then they fail, and we're talking about a 70-win team, and now we have to wait 41 years for a championship. I'm done waiting. All right, I'm sick of losing. Like, it's not all David Stern's fault over these years, but you know what? He's the guy now, and he's failed. I said he failed in 2024. We're not getting another starting pitcher. And he did the same exact thing in 2025 when his team desperately needed a starting pitcher. He had the opportunity to bring up Nolan McLean in June. He didn't want to do it because he wanted to keep his rookie status. That is not a GM that's trying to win. That is a guy that's trying to save a year of service. So when you're trying to worry about that, you're not really worried about winning. You're not trying to win at all costs. So you let a year waste away because you were more concerned about service time than actually winning ball games. So, David Stearns, do your fucking job. How about that? Because right now, your job is very bad. You aren't doing a good job. Kyle Tucker might fall into your lap and you'll get a golf clap from me, but you aren't done. Don't take a victory lap. Get back on the fucking phone and get a top starter in here as well. Because if you do that, then I'll give you credit. Because that shows you you're trying to win. Because getting Kyle Tucker and doing nothing else with the starting rotation isn't trying to win. Because all you're doing is leaving open for a big disaster to come, as I talked about last offseason, by neglecting the starting rotation. You neglect the starting rotation, you're going to screw your bullpen, no matter how good it could be. You're going to screw your bullpen because the starters aren't going to perform well. They're not going to go deep into games. You're going to overuse your bullpen, and we're back to what happened in 2025. So the Mets still have an opportunity to salvage this offseason. We'll see what happens with Kyle Tucker. That would be a great goddamn revitalization of an offseason. But Met fans can get excited about getting Kyle Tucker, but no, there's still work to be done to have a really good offseason. Because this is what's going to happen. The Mets sign Tucker. Met fans are going to go Google Gaga. They're going to go into this fantasy world, because a lot of them do, and forget that there's still work to be done. Get Kyle Tucker and get a top-line starter in here. And guess what, guys? Now we're talking about a good offseason. Now we're talking about actually life going into the 2026 season. So with that said, guys, have a great night. I want to thank you for tuning in to the Mets Talk Live show right here on the channel and on X. The latest Mets news and rumors on the show today, as we're getting the Kyle Tucker rumors starting to heat up. The Mets make an offer of $50 million AAV. Not really sure if it's a 3-year deal or a 4-year deal. Opt-outs, deferments. We really don't know. We know two things right now. The Mets offered him $50 million a year, either 3 or 4 years. And we know, confirmed by multiple reports, that the Blue Jays made an offer of a long-term deal to Kyle Tucker. So now we wait. We're on Kyle Tucker watch. Will Kyle Tucker be a New York Met? We all hope he will be. But is David Stearns going to drop the ball again? Have a great night, guys. As always, Met fans, let's go Mets. And I'll see you next time on the show, guys. Have a good night.
Rob on the mic, spitting truth from the heights. Queens unite under stadium lights. Bright nights, 7 train rides. Dreams born in the real hum. Brooklyn to Queens, yeah, we all about that outcome. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear. From Flushing Meadows, echoes bounce off the bat. Rob calls, take the mic, snaps like a thunderclap. Home runs over bridges, no gaps in the story. Mets rise, reclaiming the glory. 7 the city, blue and orange army swarm. Summer vibe electric, love in every form. From Biggie's blocks to Flushing's heartbeat. Our anthem loud, no